Heather and I work for the Revenue Development Program, and as the name implies, our responsibility is to generate revenue, non-tax revenue, for the city. We do that through, geez, I saw all of you writing. I thought, oh my God, they're taking notes on what I'm saying. Then it dawned on me, you're writing your name. We are to generate revenue for city projects. We do that through writing grants. We do that through corporate partnerships, getting the corporate sector to invest some of their money in our venues, our activities. We do that through a couple of nonprofit organizations. The Friends of Apache Junction, which is this 501c3 that raises money for police department, parks and recreation, the library. They raise money for the school district, for Boys and Girls Clubs. And also we raise money through the Community Development Corporation, which is, I don't know if any of you have gone down to the focal point and see where they're installing the pavers and the lights, and that's the folks that are heading up that project. Summarizing, a grant is a contractual obligation with an outside funder. They will give you money to address a community need, not a community want necessarily, but a community need, and then you promise to do certain things for those funds. And you've got to, like Nancy was saying, you've got to document your expenditures, you've got to document the outcomes of the grant, you've got to document any changes. So, a lot of people think revenue development and grant writing, we'll just write a grant for anything, we'll just chase dollars. It's the worst thing you can do. The saying in our profession is grant writers don't chase dollars, they chase dreams. Any more a funder looks at how can you document, how can you show that this community has this need? Did it come out of a citizens group like this? Did it come out of a general plan by the city council? How they don't want to invest their money in something that doesn't have the support of the elected officials and the general public. So remember, it's not about chasing money, it's about dreams and articulating those dreams and articulating, excuse me, those needs. Some of the grants that we've gotten here at the city, police department, we've gotten a lot for the police department, totally replaced the radio system. We got the mobile command unit. We got the mobile computers for the police cars. We got the K9 drug unit for the drug officer and the dog officer. We've gotten funds for the city attorney's office, the victim advocate that works with people that are in the process. We've gotten funds for parks and recreation, a lot of the programs that happen here. Infrastructure, infrastructure costs big dollars, and the city doesn't have big dollars, so we've been fairly lucky with getting infrastructure for repaving roads. And I don't know if any of you ever get on the US 60, all of the exits that have the graphic, those were all with grant funds from ADOT. So we've been able to get those. Redeveloping the downtown is very important to the city council and to the citizens, because if you have a better downtown, you're going to get more businesses and there'll be more revenue coming in. We got a grant, first of all, to do a study of the downtown area. What do we need to do to revitalize our downtown? And then we've little by little been chipping away by getting additional grants to actually implement the program that we had. Also, let me backtrack. One of the things that we do is for nonprofits, because we think, as the old saying goes, a rising tide floats all boats. We think that if we can help local nonprofits get more money, that's going to improve the life of everyone here. So we maintain a nonprofit blog where and if you guys aren't on, and I'm gonna give you a handout with my contact information on. So we post grant notifications on the blog. We post trainings, board development, those kinds of things that build up the capabilities of local nonprofits. we do trainings. We have done, over the years, a number of grant classes for city employees and local nonprofits. We haven't done one in a couple of years, but they're always standing room only. So we do training, again, raising the level of the skills of the local nonprofits, we think helps everybody. So for the city, we research grants, we help write grants, we review. If a department writes their own, we will look at them and when they ask and give them additional information, give them some corrections. We help administer grants because you can burn a bridge very quickly, and you guys know, with the funder if you don't do what you say you're going to do, if you don't report your finances. So we help administer grants when it's needed. So we kind of do everything related to grants. This is going to give you a lot more nitty-gritty about what's in a grant. It's going to give you some resources, electronic resources, newsletters, and grant websites that you can use. If any of you are small business, at the very end of it, it has resources that you can use for getting assistance for small business. We get a lot of calls, I'm a small business owner, I want to start a small business, can you help me? I really can't because we don't do that. I'm not the right person. So we've included information in here where you can get that kind of technical assistance if you're a small business owner or want to be a small business owner. Various projects that we've gotten funded is also in this cover, the cover document. Let me pass these out now. And if you take home nothing else from my presentation tonight, I want you to take home and remember the cover here, and I will chat about this as soon as everybody has a copy. I don't know if any of you seen this gentleman.
Oh, yeah.
Let's go on television. He has a commercial where he tells you that you can get grant dollars to do absolutely anything you want. They're free, and I like his quote. And this is his actual advertisement that we got out of a magazine. You can get money to quit your job. Yeah, it's called food stamps. So this guy puts out probably the worst misinformation about grants. First of all, that there's grants for everything. There isn't. Secondly, that it's easy money. It isn't. You are held accountable for it. That you can do whatever you want. You could send your dog to Harvard if you got a grant. According to this guy, not so, not so. So if you ever are thinking about getting this guy, and plus he gives you information that is free to the public because it's public information. So you're paying.
He sells you free
Yes,
information.
yes. Good point. He sells you free information, and there's also another variation of this, but they raise it up a notch. Everybody's sitting around in like Harris tweeds, and the women are all in business suits, and they're all sitting around a table talking about all this great grant money you can get to do anything you want. Have your infant become a brain surgeon, and blah, 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 blah. Again, it's misinformation. Don't believe it. And the interesting thing about that set of commercials is that the person, Kevin Trudeau, who does those commercials, is now being extradited because of tax evasion. So, and our community, any community with senior citizens are very susceptible to this kind of scam because, and I've had, since I've been with the city, a couple of times have had little old ladies call me up and said, well, I paid my $500 and I bought this system. When can I expect my check to buy my house? And man, that just ain't right. And you'll see it periodically in the newspaper. You'll see that somebody's doing that. So if you know of anyone and they think there's easy money, tell them ain't necessarily so. And as the bottom of it says, if it seems too good to be true, probably is. So second one is Heather Patel, who is the grant coordinator for the city, is not able to be here tonight. She and her family are on vacation. This is her information about the programs she has. She coordinates the city's Community Development Block Grant Program, which is basically an annual grant we get from the federal government to do infrastructure kinds of projects. Roads, sewers, we've gotten some things for the police department. So that's kind of over the years it's gotten less and less, but it's kind of a mainstay for a community like ours that, dollars are hard to come by. And so we've been able to count on that. Secondly, Heather coordinates a program, a housing rehabilitation program, that depending on if you qualify for the program, you can get funds to rehab your home, to make it safe, habitable, and livable. So she does things like put in air conditioners when someone's air conditioners have broken, or repair roofs, things like that, real nitty-gritty. It's not to put in a hot tub or anything like that. It's livable kinds of conditions. Heather's contact information is on the page right here. If you flip to the second page, she also coordinates the paint-a-thon. If you know someone, a senior or someone with a disability that needs to have their house painted and they can't do it, there's a program that volunteers will come together. I think it's always the last Saturday in October, and the paint is donated, so no out of pocket. And they will come and paint your house for you. I think this past year we had volunteer groups that painted 4 or 5 homes. Over the years, I think we've had, and I could be way off base on this, I think we've had like 18 homes painted with volunteer service to the community. So if you know of anybody, that's a great program. Heather also coordinates the income tax program. There are volunteers that will come to locations around the city, and it's usually posted on our website. After the first year, one site is here at the library, one is at the Elks Club, and they will help do your taxes for you, both federal and state. So in 2013, the volunteers here in our community did almost 1,200 federal tax returns, no charge, and 848 state tax returns. Income coming back into our community from that service was $868,000. Of that, $127,000 was from the earned income tax credit. If you know of anybody, that are scraping by and, they need to do taxes, this would be a great program for them. Plus, they could find out about the earned income tax credit.
Tonight I want to cover questions you may have about the budget process and cover information about the budget and how we approach it each year. And whenever you hear things like, how did that happen and why does that happen? You often hear in just discussions with different people is follow the money. Because a lot of times that's, whether or not people can or can't do is whether there's resources to do it or not to do it. So we're going to talk about where the city of Apache Junction gets its revenue, where we expend it, and a lot of myths or misperceptions about taxes. Taxes are high, and one of the things I work on a lot in interactions with the community and folks that I come with is try to help engage the community to be true citizens. And that's exactly what you're doing here tonight, is getting an understanding of how that process works for the city versus the state level and the federal level, which is also so very important. Our fiscal year is a July 1 to June 30th fiscal year. So today marks basically halfway mark of our fiscal year. So right now, me and the budget team, we are working on double checking what we thought we would spend, where we're at in that process, and should be around 50% of our budget at this point. And if we see some issues, it's a good time to address those now versus 6 months or 3 months from now. The budget document is first a financial tool. It's obviously something that we use to measure our finances, like I said, but in addition, it's also a planning and a programming document, helps us plan for the future. It doesn't necessarily hold us to be exactly correct like an accounting system, but it is a planning document, and it's also another word, it's a policy document. It's a big part of what the mayor and council have as a responsibility, is to guide and give goals and objectives of how they want to spend those precious resources that come in from the community, known as taxes. It's a typical process for the budget. Actually, it starts almost 6 months ahead of the next fiscal year. So we're getting started with preliminary revenue estimates. Our finance department does this. So the departments aren't engaged just quite yet until January, where they begin to build a base budget. Any guess on what the base budget might be, or what I might be referring to when I say building the base budget? What departments would do? What they're looking at is, okay, what are the current levels of service that we're providing? Can we, if I'm Jeff Bell, the Parks Director, can we continue to provide 8 weeks or 9 weeks of swim lessons again next year? Can we continue to look at after-school programs? That's the base budget in terms of the current level of service before we even get into existing or expanding or reductions. February, we finalize those revenue estimates and departments submit their budget. So here in the next 2 months, they're going to be planning and finishing up their budget. We do a combination of a program budget and a line item budget. Does everybody have one? Let's see Sandra there. We are still small enough to actually go through every single line item in our budget, which I think is great for our mayor and council if they'd like to do that. It's not, I worked for the city of San Antonio, and the budget itself was, huge to go through every single line item. It's $1 billion budget. They spend $1 billion in a year. Ours is much less. We spend $44 million. It's a ton of money. It's a lot of money, $44 million, but compared to a municipality like Phoenix or San Antonio, it's different. Unlike the federal government, we don't print money. We have to balance our budget. We do balance our budget. We take it very seriously. And so we, in fact, are obligated by the state and mandated by the state to balance that budget. And it's something we're very proud of, that we've done that every year. And at the local level, I guess, you run into Mayor John Insalak, or you run into Vice Mayor Robin Barker, and they have to be accountable. It's not, no offense, but I've never met John McCain, right? Or I haven't met Jeff Flake either. And I would like to, and say, hey, when are you going to balance your budget? That kind of a thing. And they hold us accountable, but I think it's interesting that they're not. And I don't know how that works. I don't know. Someday there is going to be an accounting on that. In the city of Apache Junction, one of the myths is that it comes from property tax. When you own property in the city, you'll notice that it'll say like Pinal County, AJ Unified, it'll say the city as well, but if you read real close, it'll say 0. We've not, to this point, exercised that ability or gone to the voters, actually is what it would require to utilize the property tax. There are some good things and bad things, because when you view sales tax versus income tax versus property tax, there can be different philosophies on who gets hurt the worst by having a higher sales tax. In Arizona, like in some states, in Texas and I think it's Nevada, they don't have, or Texas doesn't have an income tax, Nevada doesn't have a sales tax. So they've made different choices about that in those states. But in Arizona, we have all three, and in Apache Junction in particular, you'll see on this pie chart, is where I'm at on the top of the page there, that half of our general fund revenue, that $11.2 million, is in city sales tax. So right now, if you were to go to Walmart and you were to purchase a retail item there, you would be charged around just under 10%. Of that 10%, 2.2% comes back to your city. 2.2% of all sales and transactions in the city come back, and that makes up this $11.2 million. Now, the other big portion is $3.9 million, that's state shared revenues, and that is with income tax. 30 years ago or so, the voters in cities and towns were going to try to do a city and town income tax. And it got that same reaction. Are you kidding me? So there was a discussion between the state legislature and cities and mayors and councils that if we don't do an income tax, will you share some of your income tax? And that's what that amount is right now, that 3.9 number, about $4 million of our $20 million in the general fund comes back to us as a portionate share based on population. Apache Junction has 30 or 4, just around under 30 just around 37,000 people. That's what comes back to us. State sales tax, of that part, that 8% that I talked about, there's a portion that comes back to cities and towns as well. And then that was in lieu of an income tax. And then we have 1.5 million in vehicle license. So when you go do your registrations for vehicle license, a portion of it stays in your city and town, which is great. And then other revenue, that comes from like the fees that come to rent out portions of the recreation center, swim lessons. Any user fee would be in this category of revenue. We actually get $1 per ton that goes into the landfill. I don't know if everybody knew that or not. That next slide there says of all of our revenue, 3 major revenues: the city sales tax, the state shared revenue, and the state sales tax represent the big portion. Like I said, on the general fund revenue, the local city sales tax is our largest portion at 2.2%. And sometimes that will generate an effort on a mayor and council to maybe, if you think about, I don't know if they had the opportunity to visit with Janine Solly yet of Economic Development. She was last session. Mesa was proud to announce the information on Apple coming to this area. Now, for economic development, folks, that is huge. That brings jobs, and that brings opportunity for sustained growth in an area. That's way different in economic development versus like another Burger King. And Burger Kings are great, right? Or another Circle K. And let me tell you the difference. In economic development, having a job generator brings in property tax. It brings in people who are going to come and live there, who are going to pay more property tax. It's going to bring in more folks who are going to spend more on the sales tax. But as a city, by not having as a long-term revenue stream a property tax, mayor and council could be persuaded to not worry too much about those types of projects, because where they really get the money, half of our money, or a big chunk of it, is by sales tax. Another McDonald's or another Circle K or another. And there's good and bad from it, but in terms of having an employment base of folks who have livable wages, think about how much the folks who work at those places make. And where do they want to live? They want to live as close as they can to their work occupation where they work. And so those are little things that we deal with, because our mayor and council would be incentivized to try to get a retail type thing, whereas the city of Mesa, they aren't. And of course, they're a much bigger city, and they'll incentivize, or they'll put infrastructure in the ground for an Apple. I think they helped a lot on intersection and those kind of things. Here's a little historical perspective on the city sales tax. You'll see and it probably isn't a surprise to you, in 06-07, the city generated with 2.2% $11.3 million, and in just 2 years, we went from $11.3 million to $9 million. And it was belt tightening time and a really tough time. We ended up having to reduce our total force, from about 250 employees to about 200. Some from attrition, some from having to do layoffs, and most of those were generated from places where there wasn't as much work. For example, we used to do 1,000 homes a year for building permits, and we had 3 building permit folks. Now we only have 1. And so over that 2-year period, we had to reduce. And we did that in planning, in the building permit area, and those areas that there wasn't the same growth going on. And so just like the private sector, a local government has to react quickly to those types of things. And unfortunately, that was something that we went through as an organization. You'll see that we've had, since 2010, a little bit of a steady growth. And then this last year, we saw a $600,000 increase. Almost, so it's taken us 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, almost 7 fiscal years or 7 years to get back to where we were in terms of city sales tax. On the state shared revenue, we're still trying to get back. Our high, it's a 2-year lag, but in 08-09 we had 5.1 million, and then this last year we have 3.9 million. And just those 2 revenue streams decreased our overall general fund budget by 20%. Where does the money go? And I would say these are to city essential services. A big portion goes to our police department. You'll see that in the next slide. Our Parks Recreation, Library Department, Public Works, Streets and Engineering, Magistrate Court, Development Services, which includes planning, and building and the code compliance. And then another portion is for what I call our general services or other services, the administration, which is our department, the city attorney, the city clerk, the finance, and the marketing and communication and economic development. Generally speaking, this general fund budget is for operating, and almost I would say 85% to 88% is salary. We're a service organization, so it's for people to help serve. We do have a capital budget, which is separate, and so when I talk about the total all funds budget, it's a little bit different. It's a higher number, it's 40 million. And that's an effort to try to do some capital projects like what we're in right now. And depending on the years and those types of things, we can do a little bit more, a little bit less. Our city also has a very low amount of debt service. You've heard me talk about this facility's paid off, this city hall's paid off. We do owe about $290,000 a year for about 17 more years at the library, for the library expansion that we did. We got it at a really low interest rate, under 4%. And we felt like that future generations could help pay for that. But the mayor and council really wanted to get all of these others paid off for now. Where are we now? All budgets are continue to be conservative. The economic downturn was far worse than others in Arizona. We had hoped for what's called a V recovery, where the revenues go down, but then they are at a certain point and then come back. We thought we might have a U after a year, which is a little bit slower recovery, then back up. Didn't happen. We were worried about a W, which is like 2 recessions. We're not quite sure, but we just think it's more like an L. We're just at a new low. And so when we plan for and we visit with departments and work with our community and our mayor and council, we are not going out and saying, hey, we're going to do another park or another multi-gym. We just don't have the ability to, we're doing the best we can to maintain the parks that we have now and do those types of things. So that's kind of where we see it at this point in terms of revenue coming in. Where are we now? All budgets are continue to be conservative. The economic downturn was far worse than others in Arizona. We had hoped for what's called a V recovery, where the revenues go down, but then they are at a certain point and then come back. We thought we might have a U after a year, which is a little bit slower recovery, then back up. Didn't happen. We were worried about a W, which is like 2 recessions. We're not quite sure, but we just think it's more like an L. We're just at a new low. And so when we plan for and we visit with departments and work with our community and our mayor and council, we are not going out and saying, hey, we're going to do another park or another multi-gym. We just don't have the ability to, we're doing the best we can to maintain the parks that we have now and do those types of things. So that's kind of where we see it at this point in terms of revenue coming in. One of the things I'm going to talk about here in a little while is our streets and roads. One of the things that they have done at the state level to balance their budget is to, in essence, their priority was public safety, not unlike many governments. Take some of the money that's called HURF, Highway User Revenue Fee, which is money that's paid on the gas tax wherever we are in Arizona, and they collect it, and then they had a policy of sending a certain portion to the cities and towns for many years. But when the recession hit, they decided, well, we statutorily feel like we can take some of that and move it into their in essence, their police department and their Department of Public Safety. There's a Channel 3 discussion and press, well, it's not a press release, it's actually an article on a press release that was done today by Pinal County, our county attorney, and probably, I think it's the sheriff's office, on Ironwood Road. And that Ironwood Road has had a lot of accidents. They really focused on the accidents there. But hidden in there, which is very important, but what I saw in there was a reference to HURF, and that the county itself has had a reduction of over $1 million a year for 4 years. And the 3 state legislators have come out and said, enough, we're going to quit raiding the HURF fund, so that cities and towns. To me, that kind of feels like, well, yeah, you're stopping the bleeding, but I need some more blood, to help backfill some of this, and you'll see what I'm talking about in terms of our roads and our road budget, because what we call our HURF fund has been hurt even worse than the general fund. Downtown revitalization. So our accomplishments this last year. About 2 years ago, the mayor and council really started focusing in, and the community has worked on trying to create a sense of place in what we call the focal point area. You probably heard Mayor John talk about that over by where the Christmas tree is, I think still. And make investments in creating a place that someday we will be able to have a vibrant, a pedestrian-oriented with restaurants and those type of retail shops in the downtown, even maybe an amphitheater someday. And they received a report on how to start that process. And over the last few years, we've invested in some streetscape, on-street parking, some lights, some landscaping, some wider sidewalks, and we've seen some investment. Yeah, there it is. Yeah, there's a photo. Looks good. We've seen Mountain Health and Wellness. They've invested $5 million in their building. The community college, Central Arizona College, invested $20 million in that area, in our southeast part of that area. We're seeing I think it's called Cowboys Up. They're starting to get their restaurant going. We're excited about that. We don't know what happens to the Shell station. Looks like he has workers come for a week and a lot of people say it must be the city, and I was like, no, I don't know what's going on. It's not the private sector. It's not on the public, and all of a sudden it looks like it's going to get going. He's cut down a bunch of trees and then pulled the tanks and got the roof fixed, but then all of a sudden no one's been there for a month. So who knows? But the idea is to help prime the pump and get things energized and excited there, and we're working towards that, and that was some excitement. So those are some of the accomplishments there. Some of our city goals for this next year are to continue the efforts in the downtown. We're hoping to get some more public art down in the downtown, and we're really working to see the state budget and see what they do. We'll be watching. There is an effort by the community of Santan Valley to incorporate. If they incorporate into a city, they actually have well over double our size. If you aren't aware, on Ironwood Road, you go down into Santan Valley, they have 70,000 people there, and they would like to become a city. I find it fascinating that city of Superior, Kearney, Hayden, Winkleman, you can add all of them up. They're all incorporated. Miami Globe, and like triple their population, and they'd still be like half the size of AJ, and then another half the size of Santan. Santan's not an incorporated area, so when folks there have issues about, hey, where's our city park, or we want to have swim lessons, or where's our local library, they go to the county supervisors, and the county's just not set up in that way to do those things. We feel like that someday they will get organized enough, create their own city. When that happens, then a greater portion of our revenue will go to them, and so it's a concern on our part, or
How many people is everybody here from Apache Junction? Okay. And I'm just going to ask, how many people have been here their whole lives? How many people are like me, from out of state originally and been here? Okay. So everybody's pretty much a transplant. I just ask that because I always try to know who my audience is before I say either positive or negative things. Thank you, Constance. But anyway, I know when I got here, I was told that Apache Junction was the mecca for methamphetamine and the drug capital of Arizona. That is the falsest statement that has ever been made, and being in a variety of different cities with my prior career, I can tell you, if anybody here from Minnesota or Wisconsin? Okay. Where were you from in Wisconsin? Sheboygan. Okay. Sheboygan is about how many population? 50,000. Okay. So it's a little larger, but between our people in Gold Canyon here, and as Brian had talked about originally, they talked about Apache Junction as far west as Signal Butte, which we take some of the county area there. They call it no man's land, where Maricopa County is supposed to patrol, and we very rarely see a patrol car there. And Mesa is over there, and we're over there working. They talked about Apache Junction as being this meth capital of the world, and there's probably more drugs in Sheboygan on any one day than there's been here in a whole year. We're a transit area. We have a lot of people that transit from the Midwest through to that golden state out on the west where the water's at, and everybody has beautiful people. Well, they sometimes get stuck here, and we kind of continue to help them to continue their movement further west. But when they talk about how Apache Junction is this terrible, Apache Junction is really a very nice community. And where we got this terrible reputation, God only knows, but it's not because of drug trafficking. And being in the different cities between LA, Chicago, and Minnesota, and all the other places, I won't say we don't have a drug problem. Every community has a drug problem, but we are far from a place where it's a really bad place. I tried to get the K-9 unit here tonight. Unfortunately, he's tied up. We actually 7 years ago, we got our first K-9 unit. That was brought in by a former chief or two who thought the idea would be great to have the K-9 unit support the narcotics unit for traffic enforcement, for the SWAT unit to use it as a barricaded subject so we don't have to use human force against either the threat of a dog going in and say, Fido's coming in and take you out if you're not coming in. A lot of people like to surrender before they see those teeth coming at them. So for a variety of reasons, the former chief thought it would be a great idea to have a K-9 unit. It has been extremely successful. Our first dog, Cena, retired in, I'm going to lie and say like August of 2013. Yeah, last year sometime. So we got our new dog just came in, and she's doing an extremely good job as well. Still only one unit because of the cost, and they talked about cost of vehicles and whatnot. If anybody has any question, I can tell you what those dollars are versus what you think a car costs. I can tell you with the equipment, with the dog, with the officer, what the real cost of that Ford Escape or Ford Explorer, which we're running now, cost. Versus what it actually costs us to put that vehicle to be serviceable, to go out to you to service you the way you're supposed to be serviced. The Animal Control Division handles the Animal Control Officers, which is different than the Paws and Claws Center or Animal Control. The Animal Control Officers that actually are out there in the truck that says Animal Control, goes out and picks up the stray dogs or the vicious dogs that are biting or doing those things that they shouldn't be doing in the community, also fall under patrol. Support Service Division is headed up by a captain. Under him is Communications, which is our 911 dispatch center, also up 24/7. They have a variety of calls that come in there, from somebody just asking general information to somebody needs medical alert, fire. They could come into them, and then they'll switch it over to fire. So they don't dispatch for fire, but they'll get the call and they'll shoot it over to the fire. So they pick up the call and they dispatch their personnel. They also handle emergencies. If somebody's at Walmart and they have a medical situation, the 911 call come into here. Sometimes there's bleed over from, no pun intended, bleed over from Mesa and there's an overload. We'll get some of those unknown calls in those areas there that people call in. We'll say, okay, that's an area of Mesa's responsibility. We'll dispatch our personnel or whoever's closer to the area until Mesa or whatever can get over to the area to assist it. So they handle those calls. They also handle alarm calls from all the businesses in your community, any homes that are on the alarm systems, they'll handle those. They handle the registration and they collect all the information needed on the alarms that are within the city. And just a multitude of other things that every time you go in there, there's something else to do. They'll talk, just like the typical thing you see on any TV show with 911. That's why some of my presentation is going to be kind of like, okay, we know what the police department does. Paws and Claws Center, we talked about that. It's the area where we actually bring the animals in and they're taken care of. If they have medical needs, we have a veterinarian that comes out periodically to take care of the medical needs they might have. And then they're housed there where we hope that they get adopted. We probably have a better chance of housing them for a longer period of time. In the old days, you used to hear a dog was held in place for 10 days, and if nobody adopted after 10 days, it went on to dog heaven or wherever it went on to. That's not necessarily true. We usually try to keep the dog. We think there's some possibility of having the dog adopted by somebody or a rescue group, and there's a multitude of different places they reach out to get these dogs rescued or adopted. They'll try to keep them on. As long as we have room in the facility, we will try to keep them as long as we can in hopes that somebody does adopt them. Cats, same way. Unfortunately, with cats, we get so many of them. The center there on any given day, when the people come into the office to work, people the way that we are, they want to get rid of their animal, we'll tie the dog up to the door or leave it by the post or a box with the cats there. So we inherit these animals that we don't really have any control of. And people that aren't even from our community will drop their animals off there and just drive away. So we try to handle those as much as we can. And that's where your animal control officers try to go out and find out who those folks are in hopes of recouping some of the funds that you all, through your contributions to the city and being good citizens, pay so that we can maintain these animals. A lot of donations come in from a variety of different groups, citizens, businesses, to help support the center, whether it's through extra food, donations for extra equipment they might need, training that we try to get the personnel to, whether it's the animal control officer or the managers at the center. We try to get them specialized training that they might need to identify the different needs of whether it's cats or dogs. We only take, I take this back, we're only supposed to take cats and dogs. Although I've gone out there and I've seen some sort of reptile out there. I've seen a turtle out there. I've seen potbelly pig. Somebody tried to drop off a miniature horse. So they have a lot of things. We do not have the expertise nor the facilities to handle anything other than cats and dogs. We do work with other rescue groups, other organizations like the Cattlemen's or the Horsemen's Association that do have the expertise and do have the contacts for horses, where we have people in the community here that own horses that we try to go out and look and see what kind of needs are out there, or if there's a report of a horse that's in some sort of stress situation, we'll take a look at that, but then bring an expert in there to take a look and see what has to be done. And we've probably had a couple of hoarding cases over the time I've been here that they've been pretty egregious, and it's pretty sad what happens to some of these animals. But we're mainly charged with doing cats and dogs. Property and evidence, anything the officer brings in has to be logged, tagged, inventoried. Property and evidence custodian's responsible for that. He's done a lot to get the technology up, so we use barcodes now, where in the old days we used to scribe and write it down by hand and everything was researched. We're in barcode now where we can scan it in. But everything that comes in, whether it's a found wallet or something that we don't know who it belongs to, a bicycle, it's all logged in, it's all inventoried. He can find that, or he's charged to find that item within a certain period of time during our normal audits. We did do a process in the last couple of years where, while he's been barcoded, that we do an annual inventory of every item, and I'm lying to you right now, but I think we had over 60,000 pieces of evidence in there this last year. And what will happen is on any given day, we have an unannounced audit where a captain will go down there and he'll pick out 10 different items that are active cases. He'll pick out 10 or 15 inactive cases and say, find these items. And he's got about 1.5 to 2 minutes to find the items. If he doesn't find it, he doesn't pass. We've been very successful. We have not been challenged in court because of any evidentiary purposes, but it's all, I give all that credit to the property evidence custodian. That's one person. We have 2 other ladies that assist him. They're both volunteers, and they help keep up with his paperwork. But if you try to manage 60,000 pieces of items that are going in and out into court, officer taking an item out, goes to court, comes back to court, he's got to be accountable for all those. He's also got to be accountable to the county when they send information back to him to say, all right, you can dispose of these items, you can destroy it, you can give it back to the rightful owner. Because he's got to account for that to get that piece of property back to the rightful owner if we know who it is. Or he's got to document what he did with that piece of property when it was disposed of. So quite a big responsibility. At one time we had almost 100,000 items in there. He's gone through it, found out things that we don't need anymore, we've been able to get rid of and dispose of them. Any violent crime, a sexual assault or homicide, we have to, by law, keep it 98 years. So that item has got to be kept. Doesn't make any difference if the person's in jail. We have to keep it at least, that's actually 99 years, but I say 98 to make it sound a little shorter. Victim services. Victim service covers a multitude. If you have a sexual assault or you're a victim of a crime, we try to have our victim service folks go out and assist those people in their time of trauma. That could be as, and I won't use the word simple, but somebody passes away. Mom and dad are there, one of the 2 passed on. She doesn't know what to do, she's having a bad time. These people come in and try to give them the emotional support they can during that time of need, whether it's getting a family member out there or if they need clergy, spiritual relief, they'll try to get one of our chaplains out to give them some assist. But Victim Services does a lot of different things where these different folks. We've recently partnered up with CAFA, the women's group here in Apache Junction, and they actually have been a great asset where they've put some of their staff to deal with domestic violence situations, that they're on call. So after hours, we can call them up if we have a woman that's been, or a man that's been a victim of domestic violence. They want to talk to somebody to find out what they need to do, what the courts are doing, give them the guidance and the information they need so that they can move forward in trying to arrange their lives. They come out and assist us, but they're on call 24/7, and they support the police officer. We do it under that property evidence, a thing called E-Trace. Any firearm that's used in the city is run, that comes into the police department, it's run through the ATF, Alcohol, Tobacco, and Firearms. We trace every weapon that comes in there to find out who the original owner is, if we can. And then we run it through NIBIN, which is the National Integrated Ballistic Information System. So every firearm that is test fired, so we can test that against any other knowns or unknowns. Any casings, the copper jacket that would be in there. Any casings we cover on the street from a drive-by shooting are recovered, and then they're also matched up for any forensic things that come up. And so between firing a gun and the casings that hold the actual bullet, they're all compared and they're all logged into a national database. We just started doing that in the last 2.5 to 3 years, and we're just about up to snuff where all our guns are currently test fired and up to date. And we're one of the few agencies probably in Arizona right now that have our guns pretty much all up to date. Mesa, obviously a little bigger, has a little more firearms, but the last year we ran over 200 weapons just in Apache Junction. Criminal investigations, kind of my, I guess my heart's in investigations. I've been doing it for a long time. Like Constance had told you, that's kind of where my career started at. When I got hired originally by Apache Junction, I was in charge of the unit there as the captain, and currently the detectives there. When I came there, they were broken into two groups. One was persons crimes, and the other one was broken into property crimes. It's not that big of a unit. You have about a total complement of about 10 officers, detectives. It was too small of a unit to have them specialize in persons and property. So we kind of mixed them up, and now they're all what I call general assignment. They handle everything from a counterfeit $20 bill to a homicide investigation, sexual assault to a child pornography case. So they kind of get the overview. And each person that comes in there goes through a training program, and they start out with basically a field training officer that'll work with a senior detective. So I have one that works with the violent crimes. He'll have them for a period of time, move them over to property crimes that he would have it. And each one of the 3 people that they'll come across has a specialty in it, so they'll spend time with them until they decide that they can sign off and say, hey, this detective, new detective, can handle everything. And then he'll go out and work his own cases, and he'll be observed by a senior detective while he's out there doing that. Crew is a unit that was started formally started probably about 2 years ago. It's basically our street crimes group. It stands for Community Resource Enforcement Unit. If you happen to see them out in the community, they drive around in unmarked cars. Sometimes they're not exactly the neatest looking people, but they're dressed in black generally. And most of the time they'll have a vest on to say police and basically a tactical unit. They're deployed to areas where the crime analyst that works for this unit will say, okay, we had X number of burglaries in Apache Junction in the last month. Looks like we should be working on Tuesdays and Thursdays between 6 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Seems like when we're getting hit, maybe you want to deploy these guys out there to sit and see what's going on out there. They'll work those areas, and generally, depending upon who's running the unit at the time, they'll probably be stuck on that thing until they make an arrest. So they also work narcotics. They do any specials that come out from the chief's office. Pretty much they're the, I call them waste management group. Crime scene tech, we have actually one full-time crime tech. She works basically 365, 24/7. It's the only one I got. She will respond to any crime scene that the detectives or patrol deem it important for her to come out there. Sergeant or above has to call her out to do it, only because if we didn't, she'd be working 24/7. She handled 2 years ago major crimes in regards to any dead body, any shooting, any robbery, and she responds to all of it. She handled over 360 cases herself just in 1 year, and that was like I think that's the numbers in 2011. So try to give her a break once in a while. She gets to visit her mom in Vermont like once or twice every 2 years. She's also a sworn officer. She put herself through, because we weren't abusing her enough, she put herself through the academy so she could be AZ post sworn as a sworn officer because she wanted to do more. So now we use her. She's gun carrying, and she can go out and we have her doing cold cases, and she's working on decomposed bodies that we have cold cases that we haven't been able to identify. She's working that with the FBI and some other agencies that assist us in some of those cold cases. Sex offender notification. Basically, it's another collateral duty. Along with their regular duties, we have the detectives each are tasked with at least one, sometimes two collateral duties that if and when they have free time, they're assigned other duties. One is sex offender notifications. A detective, any sex offender that comes into our community has to register. He has to go out and verify the person, and then on a routine basis, usually every 6 months, and at least once a year, he has to go back and verify that all information is correct: name, date of birth, where you live at, computer access, a myriad of questions they have to do. So he has to go out and interview them. We have over 120 just in Apache Junction. So figure out how long it takes to go out and interview and sit down and talk to each one. He's also the one that handles most of our major files, or a homicide or death investigation. So very busy individual. Pawn detail. Detective handles that. Collateral duty, goes out to the pawn shops, looks for different items in regards to any burglaries, interacts with the business people that have pawn shops in town or in Mesa or some of the surrounding areas, and works those quite frequently. Crime analyst, we just, in the last 3-4 years, we were actually lucky enough to get a crime analyst. A lot of communities, including, well, Pinal County, up until recently didn't even have a crime analyst. We decided, looking at the way we deploy our personnel out in the field, is that a crime analyst can work smarter instead of harder. So every police report that comes in, she gets a copy of that. She'll go on the computer, pull out what happened overnight, and she'll compare any of those major incidents. And by major, it could be just a rash of burglaries, it could be an auto theft, it could be, it doesn't mean it's all, you know, a death investigation or any violent crime type. But she'll look at anything that has a pattern, and she'll try to put them together, whether it's an arrest that's been connected with other things, just try to put them together and say, hey, detective so-and-so, one of the guys in patrol arrested somebody that had a similar method of, you know, breaking into a house. You might want to take a look at the guy. There might be some evidence that hooks together. So she'll look at that. She'll also look at certain hot spots that she puts together in the computer, because she puts everything in there. And then she'll deploy your street crimes guys into those areas that are, I call, hot spots for either burglaries or auto thefts or drug trafficking, corner sales and stuff like that. We put together, and now we're actually joined up with about 6 or 7 other agencies in the Valley: Gilbert, Chandler, Mesa. It's called CART. It's a Child Abduction Response Team. If any of those communities have a child that is reported missing or reported abducted, a page goes out, and the officers that are assigned to this child unit will respond to that community. It could be here in Apache Junction. It could be, you know, up in Glendale, and they'll respond to that area and saturate the area until the child's found or not found. But they'll spend a lot of time. So it's a way of deploying our personnel and using everybody's resources together. The agency where the child was missing is the primary and the lead on it. They come in to support that department. So we also belong to the CART team. Part of the CART team, as far as we were here in East Valley and in Arizona, started after a case that was actually developed here in Apache Junction, where we were one of those lucky, I call it lucky communities, where we recovered the child before anything bad happened to him. Normally, when a child's abducted, something usually very bad happens to a child if they're not recovered in a very short period of time. But we were lucky because a lot of hard work and a lot of different things that were able to be brought into place. And from those mistakes that we made or the things that we did that were right, we built on that, and now it's actually deployed through the whole state. So I wouldn't say it's not common, but maybe every month or every couple months a CART page will go out. And usually and thankfully what happens is the CART team gets called, but by the time they start deploying, police will get there, they'll say, oh, we found the child, which is always good news. Other programs under the department, Explorer program, we have Boy Scouts or young teenagers that are interested in maybe taking a step into law enforcement. They just want to find out, okay, is law enforcement my field? Do I want to be a crime tech? Do I want to do something in law enforcement? So the Explorer program is one of the programs that we support. There's currently about 7 juveniles that are involved in the Explorer program. One of the detectives currently is the lead in the Explorer program, and they take them in and they basically show them all the basic stuff that they would be to be a police officer, except it's part of the Boy Scouts, so it's part of the Explorer program. And they compete on an annual basis through other Boy Scout or Explorer troops throughout Arizona and nationally through different programs, whether it's crime scene recovery, shooting, a variety of different things. But our program has been extremely successful, and I don't remember, but we took a couple awards in either last year's or this year's national. So,
yeah, 2 years in a row.
and I think one of our explorers actually went on to the Naval Academy, I think in 2011. So it's been a good program. Neighborhood Watch program, Constance is actually the responsible for a lot of that. Great program. In fact, thank you very much. I think I saw next week on my calendar we start our merriment for the year of Neighborhood Watch programs, and we go out and meet with the community. The program is only as good as the community that wants it. It's based on, and you can correct me because you probably have this speech in your dreams or nightmares. It's only as good as the people that want to be involved in it. I always just tell the people is if you work with each other and know what your neighbors are doing, share a telephone tree, you try to see what you can do in your community to make it safer, it's only going to be as successful as you are. And once she gets the community in there, and I forget the amount of folks that you have to get in there, but it's a good source of folks together. But it's something where the program has worked out, and it's been somewhat successful. The prescription drug program, has anybody heard of the prescription drug program? Okay. Pinal County claims that they were instrumental in it. We've been doing it for the last 7 years. So I'm going to take credit for it in Apache Junction. We were one of the first in the state to start it. We also have had that program going for a period of time where some places only do it periodically. We've been doing it as a turn-in Monday through, when we were open, well, we still do it, Monday through Friday, as long as you can come in, drop it off, and we dispose of it. Great program. The pills and stuff that used to be dropped in garbage cans and dumpster boxes and just thrown in, flushed down the toilet, we don't see that anymore. It's good for the environment. It's good for the community because we don't have kids that are taking stuff out of mom and pop's medicine cabinet and using it, mixing them up. I looked at the stats this morning. 144,000 plus pills is what Apache Junction brought in this last year. And now start at zero again. During the, we run 2 programs, or 1 program a year where we marry up with 2? All right, stand corrected. 2 programs a year we marry up with DEA, and we have a blitz where we bring them all together. We had 33 pounds. We didn't even count the pills. 33 pounds in one group, and I think the other one was 40. So I mean, a significant amount of people, and these are legitimate drugs that people have in their medicine cabinets that would otherwise be thrown in the trash. So it's stuff that's at least taken off the street. The volunteer programs, which is kind of our heartbeat of a lot of things that happen within the city and the police department. There's a lot of stuff that we would not be able to do if it wasn't for our volunteers. Some of our volunteers work more than 40 hours a week just because they want to. But we have, and just going through them real quick, auxiliary patrol, we have folks that just drive around the community. It's a public relations thing. Obviously, the markings on the patrol car, it's hard to tell the difference between a regular patrol car and the auxiliary patrol, but they go into the parks and they talk to different citizens to find out what's going on, and if they have any special concerns, they might make a notation and bring it back to either investigation or patrol or talk to somebody about it and bring it to their attention. Investigations, we have some retired officers from a variety of different states that are looking at some of our old cold cases dating back to the early 90s and 80s, where they started out with missing persons. They've kind of gone through those and either found some people that were lost in the system now and identified that they're actually okay and there's not any problem, or gone through those, and now we're looking up to any old unsolved homicide cases or sexual assault cases. So a lot of times you see in the news where Child Protective Service is going through this terrible PR thing with all these cases that were uninvestigated. We're trying to think ahead of it. Even though we are small and we don't have a lot of resources, what do we need to do to try to make sure we've done everything we can? What's the best practice we can do to make sure that we've tried to leave no rock unturned of whether it's a missing person or sexual assault. So we put all the sexual assaults have been submitted to the state lab and asked them to at least put it in the system so that even if we have a victim that doesn't want to be a victim because they don't want to go to court, they don't want to charge a person, we have it in the system in case we should have a serial rapist or a serious sexual assault type thing that we can go back later on and maybe that person might come back to help somebody else out. So we have a lot of different things that we're working on. So a lot of those things, cold cases, administrative things, helping out where we don't have the luxury of having a lot of secretaries or clerks, they assist out. Paws and claws, we have a lot of volunteers work and give the care and needs for the animals that need to be cared and taken care of. Victim services, we talked about that with CAFA, and then the volunteers that come out because they want to go out there and get called out in the middle of the night and help mom or dad that are having a bad time because of the loss of a family member or something else. And then we have the chaplains. We have volunteer chaplains that have some connection with either church. We don't go by denomination. They're not there to push the religion out. They're just there for spiritual comfort and helping them out. Just to the stats for 2013, again, the calls for service, we had almost 40,000 calls for police service last year. So, like I said, it's quite a bit of calls. Now, all those calls are not all bad calls. So don't go, oh my God. Those are calls for service that somebody says, hey, I've heard a noise, check for well-being, just a variety of different things. Drug reported calls in are 166, which I told you, for a population of what we got of between 35, 36 during the summertime to maybe 65, 70. It's really not very bad. Property crimes, we had 1,000. That included criminal damage to property, somebody back in a car, and some.
Attention patrons, the time is 9 o'clock. The Apache Junction Multi-Gen Center is now closed.
You close, you can't leave. You got to stay till tomorrow morning now. So, and then person crimes is 263, which is a variety of different things. So, a lot of calls for service, a lot of police activity, but none of it's, all of it is not necessarily bad. So, I know I gave the real quick Chicago talk to you, but any real quick questions?